All right. How's everybody doing?
Welcome.
Good. Day two. Be like laptops down. We'll try to make this fun and interactive. So we're going to talk about intelligent interactions, our approach to building essentially what we think is the very best contact center in the world. We'll talk a lot about generative AI. Before we get started, so you have a little context of who your two speakers are. My name's Dan O'Connell. I'm our Chief AI and Strategy Officer at Dialpad. I oversee our AI product teams and roadmap. I was fortunate to join Dialpad over 5 years ago. They acquired my startup, which was a real-time speech rec and NLP startup called TalkIQ. And then Morgan has been with us as our Chief Marketing Officer for over 5 years. He was also at RingCentral prior to Dialpad. So he gets credit for all of the cool visuals and the designs. We're going to start off with a little bit of video before we hop into things. So again, thanks for being part of this and hearing us talk. And then we're going to find time for Q&A. So as we get into things, if you have questions around generative AI, large language models, NLP, speech rec, anything that might be interested, you can fire off any question. We're not afraid of hard questions, so feel free to ask whatever you'd like.
Dialpad AI works.
Oh, we might need volume on.
It won't make your coffee, but it will help crush your sales goals. It won't clean the fridge, but it will tell you who's happy on customer service calls. It's not that AI. It simply does the busy work for you. Dialpad AI for customer service, sales, and team collaboration. All in one app. Dialpad. Work beautifully.
So hey folks, Morgan Norman here. There's a reason we introduced this video. We actually been running this for quite some time, and it was all centered around that AI doesn't have to be scary. And actually, there's 42 Easter eggs on the history of AI. I'm guessing you could probably see one of them, but they're pretty hard to find the other ones. But it's been a really movement piece for us on what we're trying to do in this space. So I'm just going to walk through a little, kind of set the tone, what we're seeing in the market. And I think we all know we're seeing the headlines out there in terms of how it's going to change work, all the promises and all the existing fears. But how many of you actually can't even keep up with the AI news out there today? I mean, look around, the majority of us, including ourselves. We actually cannot figure out what's real, what's not on a weekly basis. A week is actually sometimes a year in this specific space. So it's pretty clear to all of us, and for each one of us here at Google Next, is like, this is this new era. It's really promising. We live in this era of AI, and it's probably the biggest potential for any of our careers. It doesn't matter what specific role you're in. And let me get this next one here. And every industry is impacted by this. So I know there's a lot of different sessions. We're talking about contact center. There's a lot of different industries specifically here, whether it's retail, whether it's healthcare. You heard them do some demos on state and local. But the truth of it, there isn't one that isn't impacted by this. And actually, the speed of it is just so rapid, most of us can't keep up with it. In every role. So when we think about contact center, we're going to talk a little bit about sales. We're obviously going to talk about service agents, but it actually is going across the board. We're seeing actually people think about contact centers even in recruiting today. Dan will talk to you a little bit about what we're doing there. But if you think about whatever your strategy is, you might be the pioneers of this strategy in contact service, but we need to kind of help other departments understand what we're doing in AI and help them develop some plans. And we'll give you some principles that we're seeing across the board. But the promise for AI is big, right? So we've all seen the promise, and the question is, can we all get there? Obviously speed to insights, increased productivity, business intelligence. But the real issue, and I think, Dan, you're probably best to talk about this next, is the obstacles to get there are really daunting, depending on what size businesses you are, what resources you have.
Yeah, I think we've been fortunate to be on the cutting edge of leveraging large language models to even over 7 years ago, as I said, building speech recognition NLP models. And a lot of this, I think the confusion in the market today or the challenges comes into, these are all the very real bottlenecks that I think engineering teams face. And then obviously the consumers of AI, which is, if I go and leverage a platform, do I know that they're going to protect my data? What are the data retention policies? If you're actually consuming the AI, you want to know, well, how is the business actually building these models, right? Do they have an ethical approach, right? How are they testing for biases? How do I know that a model is actually going to be built for my use case? So you'll hear me actually get into the details of building domain-specific and use case-specific models and the benefits of large foundational models and where they fit into the stack and where you actually want to have something that's, again, more specific to specific use cases. But we've dealt with all of, building as software builders, like we've dealt with each one of these bottlenecks, and they're very real challenges that are out there today.
So we actually do a couple big research studies. We're actually doing another one with Google right now. And what we're finding is most of the folks really don't fear AI. This is across customer service, right? So they're actually really more excited, but they don't know what to do about it. So if you see about 70% of sales and customer service professionals on the left-hand side, they don't actually fear that it's going to take away their jobs. So a lot of the hype we look at, back to the press perspective, is it's a lot of clickbait, but it is causing some problems, and it's up to us as a group to kind of give clarity, right? The other piece is there's a huge opportunity, right? So they believe it's actually going to help them make better decision making. And we can already see that. We can actually already see some progress in this. And then the kicker is most companies really don't have a company-wide policy. And this is not, you're probably the most advanced audience in customer service. But the reality is all these other departments are trying to figure this out, whether it's a design team, whether it's a specific marketing team, whether it's an HR team in recruiting. But there's no plan that unifies them together. And we're running another study, and we're actually seeing this is even more complex right now because we wanted to dive into this area. So we're all going to spend some time being some pioneers here, but probably one of the most important parts is how do we develop those plans? How do you communicate those plans together?
And when we talk about outcomes, I think something that many of the customers that we engage with, these are the expectations that they have. I think many of us, and I assume many of you are probably in the contact center or service or sales space, you get it. You want to have a solution that's providing the ability to go and sell more. Every business on the planet is tasked with how do I onboard employees. There's some fantastic opportunities to go and automate onboard, providing suggested answers to questions when somebody's on a live call. We'll actually get in and show off some of these things. But I also think that this applies to not just sales and service, but also just general collaboration. We talk about the ability to go summarize conversations. I remember when we built our speech rec engine 8+ years ago. We were blown away by just having a transcript of a call and being able to do that in real time. And suddenly now we're blown away again because you've got large language models that can go take a long transcript and condense it down to 4 or 5 sentences and do it really, really well. And so suddenly these vast new opportunities open up, just not in contact center and in sales, but obviously for all of us, the way we just consume data and we think about meeting notes and sharing that. So there's some really interesting things that we're working on that front. We wouldn't be here at Google Next if we weren't partners with Google. We're fortunate to be one of the first launch partners for Google Vertex. We leverage Google Vertex to go do some summarization of transcripts today, and actually wanted to show off this feature, and I'll talk about it. But what I think is really cool about these large language models is not just the ability to go and do summarization, but their ability to categorize information. And I think it opens up this vast new opportunity for any business that sits on data to suddenly get really structured data. I remember one of my first jobs that I had was actually in customer support. Fortunately for Google, I was a Googler for 10 years. But I actually had, at that time, back in 2003, I had to go and label data. And it's terribly time consuming. And suddenly you've got large language models like Vertex that can go categorize and provide structure around this. And this opens up these really fantastic opportunities for analytics. So again, I want to show off how we're leveraging summarization today in a short video. Dialpad is an AI-powered customer intelligence platform. So we power voice, video, and meetings on any device anywhere in the world and help businesses understand what's happening in those conversations. Today, we see our customers leverage Dialpad and Google's generative capabilities to drive productivity increases really across the board. We can summarize conversations for them. We can help automate the quality assurance or the call review process. What's unique about Dialpad is we rely wholeheartedly on Google Cloud. Everything from our infrastructure that allows us to have instant deployment and infinite scale. And I think there's just a plethora of opportunities to drive automation and assistance thanks to Google Vertex. What we're thrilled to show off today are instant summaries of calls and meetings, along with some really cool categorization of what's happening in those conversations. So we'll identify the call purpose and even the call outcome. So come on down and check out this recap. Hi, this is Dan at Dialpad. How can I help you?
Hi there. My name is Jim Smith, and I was following up on a refund that I requested for my account.
It has been processed, but it will take a few days before it appears as a credit on your account.
Ah, okay. I didn't realize. I thought it was going to be immediate.
What I can do is send you an email so you have a confirmation of that. Is there anything else I can help you out with?
No, that's all I need. Thanks for all your help.
So thanks to Vertex, what you'll see at the end of every call is an automatic recap. That recap has really 4 components. It's got a summary, which is we take that long transcript, we condense it down to just 4 or 5 sentences. We identify the call purpose. We also automatically identify the outcome. And lastly, we capture any action items. All of this instantly generated thanks to Google Vertex. This is just the start of our generative AI journey, and we're thrilled to partner with Google Vertex to go and power this and a host of brand new features. Cool. So it's very meta to see yourself on video, and then Jim Smith actually is sitting down there too. So kind of laughing at the whole thing. But again, these are just showing off like some of the opportunities that are there. And I think a lot of us, again, we're caught up in this idea of summarization that we kind of forget the ability to leverage these large language models for categorization. I actually think that's probably one of the biggest opportunities. Again, there's so much categorization of data that goes into whether you're in recruiting, whether you're in your sales, whether you're in support. Google's been this fantastic partner for us. Obviously, we're leveraging Vertex, as I said, to help power that feature, but it allows us to go lean into the generative AI story out the gate, works out the box. We had this fantastic experience with it. I do want to share a little bit of our journey to get to this point. We have a long history with Google. As I said, half of our executive team comes from Google. Myself, I was fortunate to spend 10 years there. But our founding team actually built Google Voice. Google at that time didn't want to commercialize that Google Voice product, and the team left. Google Ventures wrote them the first check, and that became Dialpad. Rich Miner, who's the founder of the Android operating system, is fortunate to be a member of our board, and we've been heavily invested in this partnership over the past 12 plus years. This year, we've just been recognized as a cloud technology partner, a partner of the year. So we're thrilled with this partnership and just have had a wonderful experience leveraging both Vertex. I would encourage you to take a look at things. But all of our stack is built on Google Cloud as well. We're fortunate to be one of the first people to leverage Google Cloud way back in the day. I love talking about data, and you hear me talk about conversational data sets. And I've always thought of conversational data sets as really the last offline data set. Every time you engage with software, we know how we interact with software. If you use social media, all of that information's tracked. But the one thing that we haven't perfected is we have in-person meetings, we have phone calls, we have video meetings, and for the most part, that data is just not tracked and structured. At Dialpad, what was helpful for us in all of our Gen AI journey was we sit on one of the largest conversational data sets on the planet. We've transcribed over 5 billion minutes of enterprise conversational data. And that data set has become a really valuable asset for us as we've been leaning into building a contact center and a sales center and leveraging that across large language models. I think something that's going to be playing out in this contact center space, Morgan asked how many of you are able to keep up with kind of AI in the news. I think the other thing that we're going to experience is just the pace of innovation for every piece of software, not just in the contact center side. I put this slide up here not to overwhelm you with features, but it was namely to show you that, look, the introduction of Gen AI and large language models over the past couple months and even the past couple of years, because these they didn't just magically show up. But it's really driving the pace of innovation. And I think that is an important thing to recognize for many of you that work in different industries, that the pace of innovation in your industry is going to change. And I very much think large language models and Gen AI present a really unique opportunity to rewrite pretty much every piece of software that we engage with. I think there's massive opportunities for smaller businesses to disrupt some of the giants. We can talk about Salesforce. I think many of us would build a database in a very different way today, knowing that you have AI-related technologies like real-time speech recognition, NLP, and large language models. Like you could go write the database very differently. For us, we've been very fortunate of the way that we've always positioned and looked at the contact center spaces. We think it's really important to own our whole stack. And I think very many businesses recognize the efficiencies that you can gain. So I think the best contact centers in the world will ultimately start to look like this, which is they want to go power voice, video, messaging on any device, on any channel, anywhere in the world. You want to be able to go have a stack that can understand those conversations in real time. There's no point in us building software that can do things after the fact. You want to be able to route calls, or you want to be able to drive an escalation or provide a suggested answer to a question in the moment that it's happening. You want to have this data layer because, again, I think it's not just about the front-end experience of engaging users, but it's all about how do we go gather that the data and provide insights. And then you want to have this unique experience where different users and different personas can leverage these features. We've built, fortunately, different features designed for recruiting teams and sales teams and service teams. And so you've got this really nice universal stack that allows you to go drive the pace of innovation. You get some cost efficiencies and benefits, and again, can go and maximize the opportunity that's there. We do everything ourselves. On this piece, so we do our own speech recognition. As I said, we built one of the first enterprise speech recognition engines. We do all of our own NLP in terms of sentiment analysis. So for those of you that may not know what NLP is, it's natural language processing. It's the ability to essentially take text and teach a computer how to understand it. So they can start to map named entity recognitions or identify things like a competitor name or sentiment. We have our own semantic search engine, which allows us to provide recommendations in real time. So all of us, fortunately, engage with a semantic search engine today with Google. And then we have our own generative AI layer. And so we do partner with Vertex, and we also have our own large language model that we announced just a few weeks ago. I think when you think about the next opportunity, it's AI interactions across all of this in real time. And if I build this slide out, I think ultimately it comes down to how do we use generative AI to go and do automation, assistance, and insights. And we do that across every channel that's out there. And again, being able to do that in real time that it's happening. If we talk about kind of the benefits of that, I really think it starts to shift businesses from being reactive to proactive. It allows us to be much more proactive sellers, much more proactive on the service and support side. I think it actually shifts contact centers from being a cost center to a sales center. And I think some examples of that would be customer satisfaction. So how many of you have ever filled out a CSAT survey? Or how often do you say, I shouldn't say everyone's going to raise their hand. What I meant is most of the time if somebody sends you an SMS survey or an email survey, it probably takes you a few days to actually reply to it. And perhaps what we've seen is the people that tend to reply tend to be the people that are either really pissed off still or really happy. And that gives you this conflicted view of the world. You might actually think that you're doing a really good job in customer service if you're only paying attention to the people that are writing and telling you you're doing a good job. So we think there's opportunities. We've released a feature called AI CSAT. In real time, it infers customer satisfaction from every conversation on any channel. And so suddenly you democratize and have a much less polarized view of customer satisfaction. You do it on every interaction that's out there. And again, you can do it in real time. There's no additional software that anybody ever needs to do. And we think these are really unique use cases that contact centers should be leveraging in their space. Again, it gives you far more data in real time, and you don't have any of this delay, and it's not polarized. And I think we'll start to see many more of these types of features start to show up in the contact center world for us. Some other use cases, I think many of us have heard and seen things like suggested answers to questions. We know that people hop into a contact center, they're fresh, new on the job, they don't know how to answer something, and suddenly you can go pull this information from a knowledge base, present them to it. Opportunities also to go and automate the quality assurance process. What I mean by that is typically what happens is there is a team that will go and review contact center calls or sales calls after they've happened and tell somebody if they're doing a good or a bad job. Immense opportunities. Again, I'll show some of the features off here to go and automate those processes. And to highlight, some of these examples that I just mentioned, things like scorecarding. So again, the ability to go and automate the quality assurance process. Playbooks, think of that as live agenda tracking. So many of us show up to meetings. We have certain topics that we want to make sure are spoken about. Leveraging a large language model, we can go and make sure that those topics are being spoken about. But the really cool thing is you can actually guide somebody through the conversation, provide them with suggested questions to ask, We can go and capture the answer of that question, summarize that answer back, and then write it to a CRM. And so I think these are some of the really, really unique experiences. You think of how those can also apply to, say, recruiters. Recruiters have to do a lot of the same questions. We know, I'm sure all of us have been in interviews. We probably take kind of bad notes at times, or we forget to go write it in there. All of these are opportunities that will be automated for us in the near future, again, thanks to generative AI. A few more of the examples, just to highlight some things. We showed off the video for recaps, which provides this instant summarization and categorization of conversations. I've spoken a little bit about scorecards, which is, again, the ability to go and help automate the quality assurance process. This is something that can be used for both sales organizations, recruiters, service teams. Playbooks, I just mentioned, which is essentially live agenda tracking. So you'll see here if you can see the slides, it'll go and outline what are the specific things I need to speak about budget, I need to confirm a need and timing. We can guide through the right questions for that person to be asking, and then go and capture the answers that are coming back from the customer. And then we'll write that information to a CRM. So we think these are the types of features that we think every business on the planet that has a sales organization or a contact center should be leveraging. And these are features that don't just work for the small businesses. They're really designed for every industry and every size customer that's out there. So large and small, these are just a few of the businesses that leverage Dialpad. But again, it's how do we go and build AI-powered features that work for the large companies and the largest companies in the world, but also some of the smallest ones that are out there. A couple of predictions when we get into AI in the contact center. I think the chatbot revolution is here. I think, fortunately, we've all had these experiences with chatbots in the past that are pretty good at password resets. Large language models like Vertex have demonstrated some really, really nice capabilities to help automate much more complex workflows. So we'll start to see those experiences start to pop up. I think also what we'll see is just decreased agent churn. I think one of the biggest turnover areas in a contact center is the service agents. And they have probably the hardest job in the world. I did that job when I first joined Google, but people are calling you, they're frustrated, they're pissed off, something's broke, they want help. You get overwhelmed. You have everything that you do is measured, your customer satisfaction, whether you answered something right or wrong. It's a hard job. And I think there's these opportunities to go and help provide a much better experience for the agents that are there that makes their job far easier and decreases the churn for those businesses on that side of the house. And then I think there's ultimately all of this leads into, look, the customers are going to be happier. I think in today's day and age, all of us expect to go and engage with a brand 24/7. If there's an issue, I want to have some way to contact them. I don't want them to be closed on Friday and me have to wait till Monday. And so I think, again, we'll start to see always-on brands. And ultimately, that's going to lead to this experience that allows us to have a much better experience as users. Something that Morgan has been really focused on for us, and I think just to share a little bit of our principles for AI and to give you some thoughts if you're on teams that are leveraging AI or building around AI, is something for us is we wanted to have these guiding principles. And it's really important for us to go and make sure that our businesses that leverage our customers understand that we care a lot about privacy. Your data is your data. So you have your own data retention policies. You should be able to control that data. You have an understanding of how we leverage the data sets, that we anonymize them, they're opted in, we strip them of any personal identifiable information. And ultimately, we're building features that we use. As I said, many of us are former Googlers. Google does a great job at doing what's called dog food, which is your own teams have to leverage the product before it goes to GA. We do the exact same thing. So as we're out there building new features for consumers to leverage, we go and test those features and make sure that they work. And they have to work out of the box and just be simple and easy. And if not, then we go back to the drawing board on those pieces. So I'm going to hand it back to Morgan. Morgan's going to talk through just some 9 principles for AI at work.
Yeah.
And then we'll happy to jump into Q&A.
Yeah, so we wanted to actually make this actionable. This has been something we've been working on across thousands of customers, but actually all of us are struggling with this. And this is evolving. It's actually evolving on probably I'd say a 90-day basis. So there's 9 principles we're finding across every customer, and this is regardless of what department you're on. The first key is that Is there a strategy that's AI for everyone, right? So you're going to be a pioneer when you're talking to your other peers in the department. When we think about everyone, you even saw from the keynote in Google how they're thinking about search. How is it going to work for them individually? And if you're not tackling this as a unified strategy, they're going to do it on their own. And we're seeing this across the board. Everyone's experimenting with their specific AI tools, so you want to get a little bit of control over that as part of your strategy. The other piece is it helpful and is it human? Does it work? And what we mean by this is it ready day one? There's a lot of promises in AI. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but we want you to actually have success in AI as fast as possible. How many of you would guess what the outcome people want in terms of an ROI on AI? How many of you would think it's less than 4 weeks? Not very many. That's actually what the surveys say. People want to see real results in AI in any product they're trying in less than 4 weeks. That's an unheard of speed in enterprise software. So think about that as, how is it going to be leveraged? What is the usability? What is the design beyond specific developers? How are you going to deploy that specific experience? And then what's the value? You talked about the outcomes, is define those values as fast as possible. Another one, fair and inclusive. I'm not going to go fully into this. This is a lot about the language models. We also have Jim Palmer, our VP of Engineering. If you want to talk about that, feel free to ask some questions. But one of the biggest issues is what's in the specific model? How do you retrain that model? And there's so much information about this right now, but I'm not the expert to talk about it. Real world impact, right? So do you know the impact you're trying to get, whatever you're deploying? Right? Do you actually know the impact you're trying to get? Do you know the ROI you're trying to get? Do you actually know the usability metrics you're trying to get? And just think about that as you deploy contact center, so it's not an experiment, but you can really have some quick successes across the board there. Another one, data is the new currency. So we believe conversational data is probably some of the most valuable data on the planet, but do you have a broad data strategy? And actually, how are you unifying this data, and how are you giving others access to that data, and can they take action from it and get insights from it? So a lot of the data's there, but no one can get insights in it. And I mean from the business users, because if the business users can get insights, they can actually determine, what you want to do next from a roadmap perspective. And obviously trust and privacy and secure. So we do center around the good AI. This is always something we're learning about. If you haven't read the headlines, like the latest things with all the lawsuits around privacy and security. So if you're not partnered with the right partners, and obviously Google's got a great story around this, but if you're with some of the wrong partners, there's a lot of risk. And I'll tell you my own true story. We've actually experimented with a lot of AI tools in marketing. Everyone kind of experiments with a lot of writing tools, right? Even before generative AI, there was private ones. We actually looked at everyone out there. None of them passed a security test, not one. And then later on, they started passing it. We ended up leveraging one of these. So that's just an example, is that your people are going to be submitting information across these different platforms, across different APIs. And if you have a really strong security team, you need your own policies around this. But just be prepared. If you don't have your policy, your people are going to do it regardless. And then, does it scale for you? So scale for us is not just about from a developer perspective. Can it scale for business users? Can they take actions without you? One of the things that Dan showed with call purpose is a business user can configure those different types of call purposes. Or does it scale only with developers, only with certain resources? And if you're a smaller business, you might not be able to afford that. The biggest enterprise, which some of you are here today, that's not an issue. But if you're a mid-market company, if you have other AI projects, this really becomes a challenge. So understand that project roadmap. And if you mapped out all your AI projects, you're going to find out it actually doesn't scale based off your resources. Everyone's going to start to compete. So whether you do an offsite together, but how you actually want to map that out is going to be really critical. And continuous learning and adapting. Hopefully you're testing. Hopefully you're getting insights. Hopefully you're learning from a lot of the mistakes you made. Hopefully you're determining actually what your users are going to use, what they're going to adopt, and what's not valuable for them. But we're going through this endlessly with everything we do. And actually that's one of the advantages of our data set, is we can learn from ourselves, kind of eating our own dog food, if you will. And then future-proof. Whether it's Dialpad, whether, obviously we're all here, we've bet on Google as well. You really need to buy for what the product is today, and you need to partner. Can they develop features as fast as you need? And the truth is, most of them can't. And it's no fault of any company. There are just so many different priorities. And is that aligned with actually your vision and your specific roadmap? So we actually are working with some analysts on this. There's a couple really heavyweight ones that are here that are giving more details to this, and then hopefully if you're here, we'll get that to you. But we want this to be a playbook that all of you can actually take advantage of and get it to your coworkers and peers. But this is across the board, across what all executives are talking about. So kind of closing this out, we talked a little bit about how AI, how it works for sales. We obviously, a lot of us are here thinking about specific sales centers. We know on the service side, we think about how does it work for your specific support teams. But ultimately, when we think about the big picture of things, just one more, and it's stuck here. Does it work for your specific teams, right? Every specific team is going to eventually interface with a lot of your decisions out there. I'm so impressed with all the pioneers. We've had a lot of opportunities to talk to folks, but you are the pioneers. You are the folks that are going to determine not just your departments, but the future of the company. You have more education than most people out there on the planet if you're in this room, or if you're actually at this event. So a huge opportunity for all of us. And with that,